Welcome aboard the second Flying Kayak full flight. Today we're going to be flying this Embraer E-175 all the way from Frankfurt to Amsterdam, a short KLM city hopper flight. Our call sign for the day is going to be KLM 1766, and I'll see you again once I've fired the airplane up, got my IFR clearance, and we're ready to taxi. Frankfurt Tower, KLM 1766, radio check.
KLM 1766, Frankfurt Tower, V25.
KLM 1766 requesting IFR clearance to destination Amsterdam with information Bravo on board.
KLM 1766, standby. KLM 1766, advice ready to copy.
KLM 1766, we're ready to copy.
KLM 1766, information Bravo is current. You're clear to Amsterdam via the Maroon 6 Mike departure, runway 25 center. Flight plan route, climb, flight level 70 and squawk 1000.
KLM 1766 is cleared to Amsterdam via the Maroon 6 Mike departure, runway 25 center, initial climb flight level 70, and squawk 1000.
KLM 1766, read correct. KLM 1766, pushback approved, face west.
We have just received our IFR clearance, so now we're going to start the engines and push back. At the beginning of every airliner flight, usually the aircraft is pushed back from the gate because it cannot reverse under its own power efficiently, and will then start its engines whilst it's being pushed back or once it's standing on the taxiway. The engine start sequence on the Embraer E-175 we're flying today is fully automated. That means that all the pilot has to do is rotate the start-stop knobs to the start position. Then bleed air from the APU, which is a smaller engine in the back that can be started with an electrical starter, will provide the power needed to start each of the turbines separately. Usually the right engine or the number 2 engine is started first, and then the number 1 engine is started. This is done so that the pilot can observe what the engines are doing whilst they're starting and take manual corrective action if necessary. The next phase of flight, or the ground movement phase, is called taxiing. That's when we taxi from the terminal all the way to the active runway. Obviously, the aircraft during this phase is being configured by the 2 pilots, ready for takeoff, and it is moved along taxiways following close instructions given by the tower, or in this case by a ground controller who takes care of the ground movement of all aircraft.
KLM 1766, taxi to 1 point runway 25 center via November 3 Lima 5.
Let me tell you a bit more about our flight for today. As I already mentioned, our call sign is going to be KLM 1766, and we'll be flying from Frankfurt International Airport, Germany's largest airport, which I'm going to tell you a bit more about later, to Amsterdam International Airport, the Netherlands' largest international airport, which I'll tell you about a little bit later. The aircraft for today is an Embraer EMB 175, a twin-engine regional jetliner that I'll talk about once we're in flight. Our route for today is going to take us north from Frankfurt, and then once we've reached Marburg, we're going to be turning towards the northwest, flying towards Osnabrück, and then crossing over the Rhine into the Netherlands. After that, within a short distance, we'll be in Amsterdam airspace. We'll be doing the beginning of the flight online, Afterwards we'll go offline, as there's not going to be any air traffic control online for most of the flight. In the real world, this flight, KLM 1766, leaves Frankfurt at gate D26. We'll be leaving at gate D10, so we'll have a relatively short taxi all the way to the runway. We'll be using runway 25 center, one of Frankfurt's 3 westbound runways, and we'll be taking off from an intersection. That is, we won't be using the full length of the runway, as the runways in Frankfurt are fairly long, and we won't need all of the runway to accelerate for departure. Our flying time for today is approximately 1 hour and 7 minutes. During that 1 hour 7 minutes, we'll climb to an altitude of 24,000 feet, or approximately 7,000 meters, and we'll be cruising at Mach 0.77. Without the time we're going to spend taxiing, we'll be spending an approximate 48 minutes in the air, and we'll be using approximately 5.3 tons of fuel. Our takeoff weight will be around 35 tons, and we'll have a full load of passengers and a lot of cargo to carry today. The ground distance we're going to cover is going to be 254 nautical miles. That's an approximate 600 kilometers. We're going to fly with an average headwind of 25 knots, and we'll be using about 1,803 kilograms of fuel per hour on average. By now we're ready for takeoff, so let's start the roll and get into the air. Once we've taken off, we're going to fly a so-called departure procedure, or standard instrument departure. This is a set of waypoints that we will each fly to. These standardized waypoints have been created in order to make sure that aircraft are separated adequately during the departure phase of the flight. Close to the airport there's a lot of airplanes, and they all want to avoid each other. So if they all fly down the same route, it's very easy for air traffic controllers to keep them at a safe distance behind one another. Similarly, once we'll arrive in Amsterdam, we're going to fly an arrival procedure, or standard instrument arrival, which is a procedure, just like the departure procedure, that consists of a series of set waypoints that we will follow to the airfield. This has two advantages. First, it ensures separation once again, and secondly, it allows us to precisely get in line for the runway and then fly an instrument approach, another series of waypoints that will get us down all the way to the runway. Frankfurt International Airport is Germany's largest international airport and a hub for the Lufthansa Group airlines, Lufthansa, Condor, Airlogic, and several of the subsidiaries. It is also a focus city for low-cost carriers Ryanair, SunExpress Germany, and TUI Germany. Frankfurt International Airport has 4 main runways. 3 of them, the 07 and 25 runways, are 4,000 meters long, or 13,123 feet, with a surface of asphalt on 07 right and 07 center, and a concrete surface on the 3rd longest runway, 18. The last runway, runway 07 left or 25 right, which is used mostly for VFR traffic, is 2,800 meters long, or 9,240 feet. Frankfurt Airport is located 12 kilometers southwest of central Frankfurt, and it is one of the main entry points into Germany. It is also the 4th busiest airport in Europe, after London Heathrow, Paris Charles de Gaulle, and Amsterdam Schiphol, our destination for today. It is also the 13th busiest airport worldwide, and it is currently the busiest airport in Europe by cargo traffic. The Embraer E-175 is a part of the Embraer E-Jet family, a family of narrow-body, short-haul jets carrying 66 to 124 passengers depending on airline configuration and model. The entire family consists of the E-170, the E-175 being a slightly larger version, the E-190 and the E-195 being a slightly larger E-190. There is a business jet version of these aircraft known as the Embraer Lineage 1000, and it's currently being succeeded by the Embraer E-Jet's E2 series, which is the successor. The first E-170s were delivered in the second week of March 2004, and since then the E-Jets have flown over 25 million flight hours in 18 million flight cycles. That means that they fly an average of 1.4 hour flights, which is fairly short for an airliner, and they've had a 99.9% dependability rate. So the Embraer E-Jets are really dependable and really often flying workhorses for the airlines they fly for. Mostly they fly from small airports to the big hubs, kind of fulfilling a feeder liner role where they bring passengers to the airports where they will then continue on for longer haul flights. That's why the Embraer E-Jet series is very popular in North America, and it's used by JetBlue, for example, but also SkyWest Airlines is a large user. The other primary users would be Republic Airlines, Azul Brazilian Airlines, as it's a Brazilian aircraft, and Aeromexico Connect. In general, 190 Embraer E-170 were delivered, 511 Embraer 175 aircraft, 511 Embraer E-175 aircraft, similar to the one we flew today, and 549 Embraer 190 aircraft have been delivered. Also, an approximate 164 Embraer 195 aircraft have been delivered, making for a total of 1,501 orders and deliveries, and a backlog of 359 orders still to be fulfilled as of the 31st of March 2019. Although it is an incredibly safe airplane with a very good safety record, it has been involved in 7 hull losses, so 7 accidents where the aircraft was unrecoverable later. Out of those 7 accidents, 6 caused a total of 44 fatalities. In general, though, the Embraer E-Jet is an incredibly safe airplane that flies many times each day and therefore has an excellent safety record. The Embraer E-175 we're flying today is 31.68 meters long, that's 103 feet and 11 inches. For you Americans, it's got a wingspan of 26 meters or 85 feet and 4 inches and a wing area of 72.72 square meters or 783 square feet. It stands about 9.86 meters tall or 32 feet and 4 inches. The Embraer E-Jet can carry a maximum take-off weight of 40 tons, which is 89,000 pounds, which is a very good payload for a regional jet. That gives it a maximum payload of about 10,000 kilograms or 10 tons and about 9 tons of fuel that it can load. The Embraer E-175 is powered by the same power plant that the E-170 is powered by, a General Electric CF348E that provides 63 kilonewton of thrust. The E-175 has a maximum speed of 0.82 Mach or 470 knots, which gives you a rough maximum speed of 871 kilometers per hour at 41,000 feet. 41,000 feet also is the E-175's service ceiling, so the maximum altitude that it's been certified to go and still have a bit of climb rate left over. Usually though, she cruises at about Mach 0.75, which is 797 kilometers per hour, which is also a bit lower than the cruise speed we had today. The E-175 has a range of 2,200 nautical miles or 4,074 kilometers, which means that it is not intercontinental. You can't really fly from Europe to North America with it, but it's a more than adequate range for almost all short-haul flights in Europe and North America. It requires an approximate 2.2 kilometers for takeoff or 7,000 feet, and it can land in about 4,000 feet or 1.2 kilometers. In general, the Embraer E-Jet was meant as a short-haul jet. That means that it was meant for routes that take the approximate hour to fly, which is also what we see with the average flight time of 1.4 hours, and therefore it is being used by most airlines as such. KLM Cityhopper, our airline for today, operates 17 aircraft of the Embraer E-175 type. These are used for routes within Europe by KLM Cityhopper, and they are not named, in contrary to other KLM aircraft which are named. KLM Cityhopper offers 3 different classes on its Embraer E-175. It offers the Europe Business Class, the Economy Comfort Class, and the Economy Class. The E-175 is equipped with 2 lavatories, 1 front and 1 aft, and 2 kitchens, 1 front and 1 aft. KLM Cityhopper is the regional airline subsidiary of KLM Royal Dutch Airlines. It's based at Amsterdam Schiphol Airport, the airport we're flying to today, and is a subsidiary of the Air France KLM company. The airline operates, just as I mentioned earlier, mostly feeder services throughout Europe, flying from several German cities to Amsterdam, and is therefore often used to connect to KLM flights. The KLM Cityhopper fleet consists of 17 Embraer E-175s, as I already mentioned, 32 E-190s, and 1 Embraer E-195. That is a total of 50 aircraft. Historically, KLM Cityhoppers operated different aircraft from the Embraer E-175 and E-190 all the way to the Saab 340 or Fokker 50 and Fokker 70s. However, aside from the Embraers, all of those aircraft have been retired. Amsterdam Schiphol International Airport, the largest international airport of the Netherlands, is the 3rd busiest airport in Europe in terms of passenger volume and the busiest in Europe in terms of aircraft movement. The airport consists of a single large terminal split into 3 departure halls. Schiphol Airport is the main hub for KLM and its regional subsidiaries, as well as for several other Dutch airlines. It also serves as a base for low-cost carrier EasyJet and the airline's Level and Vueling. Schiphol International Airport has 6 runways, the longest being 3,800 meters or 12,467 feet long, and the runway we're going to land on today, runway 0422, the Ostbahn, being 2,014 meters long or 6,608 feet. Although that is fairly short for the runway of a large international airport, it is still long enough for the Embraer E-Jet to land easily. Also, this runway is located fairly close to the center of the airport, allowing for a short taxi. As Amsterdam Airport is one of the largest airports of Europe, it actually often has very long taxis. What you are currently seeing is a so-called instrument approach. During an instrument approach, one follows a set of waypoints, just as we did during the departure procedure and the arrival procedure that comes just prior to the instrument approach, down to the runway. These waypoints lay out a safe path, both in the vertical direction as well as in the horizontal direction, that takes us straight from the end of our arrival procedure down to the runway. This again aids separation of different aircraft, but it also allows aircraft to find the runway even in very low visibility, and in some cases even in 0 visibility. The current instrument approach that we are performing is a so-called ILS approach, or Instrument Landing System approach. In this type of approach, a radio beacon located at the edge of the runway sends out a radio signal that tells the aircraft's instruments exactly where the runway is. This information is then displayed in the cockpit for the pilot and relayed to the autopilot, meaning that the autopilot can follow this radio beacon down to the runway. Or, of course, if the pilot chooses to do so, he can fly the airplane down to the runway manually, following the instrument indications of where this radio beacon is located on his primary flight display. An instrument approach usually is landed by the pilot. Only if there's really very low visibility does the autopilot land. This means that at about 1,000 feet above the runway, we're going to turn off the autopilot and take manual control of the aircraft. Today, there's a right crosswind, so we'll have to compensate for the wind pushing us off to the left whilst we're approaching the airport. And we'll have to compensate for that again when we're touching down on the runway. The goal of the pilot is to start flaring the aircraft. That means pulling up the nose slightly in order to reduce the rate of descent at just about 50 feet above the runway. An automated radio call-out will tell the pilot his altitude above the runway during those last few feet. You can hear him starting out somewhere around 500 feet, and then he's going to count down 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, and then sometimes the radio also calls out 5, which is then the final call-out before touchdown. At touchdown, the pilot will reduce his throttles to 0 initially, and then he'll try and get the nose gear on the ground. Usually that settles down by itself, and he'll then just turn the throttles back into the reversed thrust mode, where the throttles will reverse the thrust of the engines, thus aiding deceleration and allowing him to be not that hard on the brakes. The brakes on most modern airliners are regulated by a so-called auto brake system. This auto brake system has several settings. On the E-175 it has settings low, medium, and high, or the RTO setting, which is used only for takeoff abortions, and that means that the pilot sets his auto brake early during the descent so that the aircraft will be braked automatically. This reduces brake wear and reduces brake temperature and makes it a fairly smooth experience for the passengers.
Autopilot. Autopilot.
Approaching minimums. Minimums. 100. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Throttle. Auto brake.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Amsterdam Schiphol International Airport. I hope you enjoyed this full flight episode. I hope I could give you some more information on what exactly a pilot does when flying a small regional airliner like the Embraer 175, and I hope that you enjoyed the narration I gave you whilst we were flying across Europe. I wish you a wonderful day, safe travels, blue skies, and many happy landings, and I hope that you'll join me again during the next full flight episode, which will most likely be a full long-haul flight from Amsterdam all the way to Quito International Airport in South America.